Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood at the window of his office, looking out at the busy streets of New Seoul. 15 years had passed since the war ended. 15 years of peace, growth, and hope. The city below buzzed with life as humans, and friendly. Aliens worked together, building a better future. But today, everything felt wrong. The encrypted message on his desk contained information that made his blood run cold. For months, his intelligence teams had been tracking strange signals from the Outer Rim. What they found would change everything humanity believed about the peace they had fought so hard to win. Dr. Park So-young walked into his office without knocking. Her face was pale, and her hands shook slightly. Kim had known her since the war. When she spent 3 terrible years as a prisoner of the Kethrans, she had survived torture, experiments, and worse. Nothing should make her look this frightened. "Admiral, we need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "It's about the headaches I've been having. The medical scans found something." Kim gestured to a chair. So-young had been one of thousands of human prisoners the Kethrans returned after the peace treaty. All of them had been checked for diseases and injuries. All of them had been declared healthy. All of them had been wrong. "They put something in my brain," So-young continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tiny machines, so small our scanners couldn't detect them 15 years ago. But technology has improved. We can see them now." She handed him a data pad showing brain scans. Kim was not a doctor, but even he could see the tiny dots scattered throughout her brain tissue. There were hundreds of them. "What do they do?" he asked, though he was starting to guess the answer. "They watch, they listen, they record everything I see, hear, think, and feel. Then they send it all back to the Kethran homeworld." So-young's voice was steady now, but Kim could see the anger building in her eyes. "I've been a spy for 15 years, and I never knew it." Kim felt sick. If So-young had these devices, then probably all the former prisoners did. Thousands of humans, living their normal lives, working in government, military, and research positions. All of them unknowingly sending information to their former captors. "There's more," So-young said. "I ran tests on tissue samples from other former prisoners. We all have them. Every single one of us. The Kethrans have been watching human society rebuild through our eyes." A knock at the door interrupted them. Commander Lee Dongwoo entered, carrying a data pad and wearing the grim expression Kim had learned to fear. The young officer was brilliant at finding patterns others missed. When he looked this serious, it meant trouble. "Admiral, I've been analyzing those mining reports from the Outer Rim," Dongwoo said. "The ones that seemed strange. I think I know why they bothered us." Kim waved him to continue. In the past few weeks, several asteroid mining operations had been reporting unusual findings. Strange metals, odd energy readings, equipment that worked differently than expected. Each report alone meant nothing. Together they painted a worrying picture. "Sir, these aren't mining operations," Dongwoo said, activating a holographic display. "Look at the pattern of their locations. They form a perfect defensive grid around human space. Each site has the exact metals needed to build Kethran weapons and shields." The hologram showed dozens of red dots surrounding human territory. Kim had seen similar patterns during the war. They were staging areas, supply depots, and forward bases. The Kethrans weren't mining asteroids. They were building an invasion fleet. "How long would it take them to build a fleet from these sites?" Kim asked. "Based on Kethran construction methods from the war, maybe 2 years. But, sir, these sites have been active for over 10 years. Dongwoo's voice was tight with controlled fear. "They could have a massive fleet already built and hidden." Kim stared at the display. Everything made sense now. The peace treaty had never been about peace. It had been about time. "Time for the Kethrans to study humanity, to prepare, to build weapons designed specifically to destroy human defenses. Get me Ambassador Choi Ji-hai," Kim ordered, "and start emergency protocols. This information goes to Earth Command immediately." Ambassador Choi arrived within minutes. As the chief diplomatic liaison with alien species, she had been working to maintain the peace for 15 years. Kim quickly explained what they had discovered. "This can't be right," Choi said, but her voice lacked conviction. "The Kethrans signed binding treaties. They gave guarantees. They lied." So Young interrupted. They've been lying for 15 years, using me and thousands of others to spy on us while they prepared for a second war. Choi's face went white. As a diplomat, she had spent countless hours with Kethran officials. She knew their customs, their language, their way of thinking. Or thought she did. If this is true, she said slowly, then everything we've built since the war is based on a lie. Our defense plans, our trade agreements, our expansion into new systems. All of it assumes the Kethrans will honor the peace. Kim activated his emergency communication system. Within seconds, he was connected to Earth Command, the space defense stations around Luna, and military commanders throughout human space. This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho with a Priority Alpha Emergency Bulletin, he began. All forces are to immediately begin combat readiness protocols. Intelligence indicates imminent large-scale Kethran attack. This is not a drill, the responses came. Quickly. Confusion, disbelief, then urgent questions about details and timelines. Kim provided what information he had, while his staff worked frantically to gather more intelligence. Commander Dong-woo had expanded his analysis to include shipping records, communication logs, and energy signatures from across human space. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The Kethrans hadn't just been building ships, they had been positioning themselves for a coordinated strike that would hit every major human world simultaneously. Admiral, Dong-woo reported, based on fleet positioning and supply movements, I estimate they'll be ready to attack within 30 days, maybe sooner. Dr. So Young had been working with the medical teams, scanning former prisoners around the clock. The results confirmed their worst fears. Every single returned prisoner carried the spy devices. Worse, the devices had been evolving, becoming more sophisticated over time. Recent scans showed they were now capable of influencing thoughts and emotions, not just recording them. They've been conditioning us, So Young explained to the emergency meeting Kim had called. Slowly, carefully, making former prisoners more trusting of Kethran motives, more likely to argue for peaceful solutions. They've been manipulating our government through our own people. Ambassador Choi reviewed 15 years of diplomatic records with new eyes. Pattern after pattern emerged, showing how Kethran negotiators had steered human expansion away from strategically important systems, how they had encouraged human research into areas that would be useless against Kethran weapons, how they had slowly isolated humanity from potential alien allies. They've been playing a long game, she reported. Everything they've done since the war has been designed to weaken us and strengthen themselves. The peace treaty wasn't the end of the war. It was just a pause while they prepared to finish what they started. As reports flooded in from across human space, the scope of Kethran deception became clear. Hidden bases disguised as research stations, trade agreements that gave Kethrans access to human defensive plans, cultural exchange programs that were actually intelligence-gathering operations. Kim looked around the room at his officers and advisors. These people had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. They had believed in the peace, worked for it, sacrificed for it. Now they had to accept that it had all been a lie. Sir, Commander Dong-woo said quietly, there's one more thing. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures moving toward human space. Based on the size and configuration, it looks like a Kethran battle fleet. A big one. Kim closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his face was hard with determination. How big? He asked. Preliminary estimates suggest over 1,000 capital ships, sir. Maybe twice that number. It's larger than anything we faced in the First War. The room fell silent. During the original war, the largest Kethran fleet humanity had ever fought contained maybe 200 ships. 1,000 ships would be enough to destroy every human world within weeks, but Kim was not ready to surrender. Humanity had survived the First War through courage, creativity, and refusal to give up. They would need all of those qualities again, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, standing up, the Kethrans think they've been clever. They think they understand us because they've been watching us for 15 years. They're about to learn that understanding humans and predicting what we'll do are two very different things. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All human forces, this is Admiral Kim Tae-ho. As of this moment, we are at war. General Yoon Min-ho stood in the war room deep beneath the surface of Luna, staring at displays that showed the approaching Kethran fleet. The numbers were worse than they had first thought. 1,500 capital ships supported by countless smaller vessels. Against them, humanity could field maybe 300 ships total. "Sir, we're receiving surrender demands from the Kethrin fleet commander," reported Captain Bei Hyajin. Her voice was steady, but Minho could see the tension in her shoulders. "They're giving us 24 hours to evacuate Earth and all outer colonies." Minho almost laughed. The Kethrin still didn't understand humans at all, despite watching them for 15 years. Surrender was not in human nature, especially when, "Facing extinction, send them our response," he said. "Tell them they can go to hell." Engineer Kang Junseo looked up from his workstation where he had been analyzing captured Kethrin technology. For the past 2 weeks, since learning about the coming invasion, he had been working without sleep to develop new weapons. "General, I think I have something," Junseo said, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. "The spy devices in the former prisoners' brains, they're not just sending information to the Kethrins. They're receiving it too." Minho walked over to Junseo's station. The engineer had always been brilliant at seeing possibilities others missed. During the First War, his modifications to human weapons had given them crucial advantages. "What? Do you mean receiving?" Minho asked. "The devices can be programmed remotely. If we can access their communication frequency, we might be able to send our own signals. Override their programming, turn them against the Kethrins." Pilot Lim Subin, who had been studying Kethrin fighter formations, joined the conversation. As humanity's top fighter ace, she understood better than anyone how the enemy thought in combat. "The Kethrins rely on perfect coordination," she said. "All their tactics depend on ships doing exactly what they're supposed to do at exactly the right time. If we could disrupt that coordination, we could turn their greatest strength into a weakness," Minho finished. He was beginning to see the shape of a plan. It was desperate, probably impossible, but it was human in its audacity. Dr. Park So-young had volunteered to be the test subject for Junseo's reprogramming attempt. She sat in the medical bay, sensors attached to her head, while Junseo carefully attempted to access the Kethrin devices in her brain. "I can feel them," she said, her eyes closed in concentration. "The devices are trying to resist, but they're not designed to fight back against someone who knows they're there." Junseo's fingers flew over his controls. "Got it. I'm in their system. So-young, try to think about, I don't know, something military, battle plans." So-young concentrated on the human fleet deployments around Earth. Immediately, the monitoring systems showed the spy devices activating, preparing to transmit the information to the Kethrin fleet. "Now," Junseo said, "I'm redirecting their signal. Instead of transmitting true information about human defenses, the devices began sending false data. Fake ship positions, imaginary weapon capabilities, non-existent battle plans. But the information was carefully crafted to look real to Kethrin analysts." "It's working," So-young reported. "I can feel the devices accepting the new programming. The Kethrins will think they're still getting accurate intelligence, but everything they receive will be lies." Admiral Kim Tae-ho had been coordinating with military commanders across human space. Operation Prometheus was more complex than any battle plan in human history. It required perfect timing and absolute trust between forces separated by light years. "Captain Bay, are your stealth ships ready?" he asked. Hyjin nodded. "The new coding technology works even better than we hoped. Kethrin sensors can't detect us until we're close enough to ram them. We've got 50 ships equipped and ready." The stealth technology was another of Junseo's innovations. By studying how Kethran sensors worked, he had developed a coating that made ships nearly invisible. The coating was expensive and difficult to produce, so they could only equip their fastest ships, but 50 invisible ships could do enormous damage if used correctly. "Pilot Lim, what about the fighter squadrons?" Kim asked. Subin grinned fiercely. "We've been practicing the new tactics for 2 weeks straight. The Kethrins expect us to fight defensively, like we did in the First War. They're going to get a very different reception this time." The new fighter tactics were based on a simple principle: unpredictability. Instead of following standard formation, flying human pilots would break apart and attack from random directions. Each pilot would make their own decisions about targets and timing. It would look like chaos to the Kethrins, who relied on analyzing patterns to predict enemy moves. As the Kethrin fleet approached the outer edge of the solar system, humanity's response was unlike anything the aliens had studied. Instead of massing, their ships for a defensive battle, human forces scattered throughout the system. Small groups of ships took position near asteroids, space stations, and even inside the atmosphere of gas giants. The Kethran fleet commander, confident in his overwhelming advantage, ordered a direct attack on Earth. His ships moved in perfect formation, their tactics based on 15 years of studying human defensive patterns. They flew straight into the most devastating ambush in galactic history. Captain Bay's stealth ships struck first, appearing without warning inside the Kethran formation. Their weapons, modified with Junseo's improvements, tore through Kethran shields designed to stop conventional human attacks. The enemy had no time to adapt before 50 of their capital ships were destroyed or crippled. The Kethran commander tried to regroup his forces, but his tactical computers couldn't process what was happening. The false intelligence from the spy devices showed human ships in positions where none existed, while real human forces attacked from directions the computers said were impossible. Pilot Lim led the fighter attack with tactics that defied every rule of space combat. Her squadrons split up and attacked individual targets, each pilot improvising their approach based on what they saw. Kethran point defense systems, programmed to track coordinated formations, couldn't lock onto targets that moved in completely. Random patterns. Their command ship is trying to retreat, reported Commander Dongwu, tracking the battle from Luna. They're sending emergency signals to their home fleet. General Minho smiled grimly. Let them run. We want them to report back about what happened here. The battle continued for 6 hours. When it ended, the Kethran invasion fleet was scattered and broken. Over half their ships were destroyed or too damaged to fight. The survivors fled toward the outer system, abandoning their carefully planned attack. But Minho knew this was only the beginning. The main Kethran fleet was still out there, and they would adapt to what they had learned from this battle. Humanity had won the first round through surprise and innovation. The next round would be much harder. Dr. So Young had been monitoring the spy device network throughout the battle. General, I'm detecting increased activity from the devices in former prisoners throughout human space. The Kethrans are trying to get better intelligence about what went wrong. Can you feed them more false information? Minho asked. Better than that, So Young replied. I think we can turn the entire network against them. If we coordinate properly, we can make them believe whatever we want them to believe. Junseo was already working on the technical details. We need to be careful. If we make the deception too obvious, they'll realize their spy network is compromised. But if we're subtle about it, we can lead them into making exactly the mistakes we want them to make, finished Subin. Admiral Kim was receiving reports from across human space. The scattered Kethran survivors were regrouping at their hidden bases, trying to understand how their perfect plan had failed so completely. Their communications showed confusion and fear. For the first time in their history, the Kethrans had encountered an enemy they couldn't predict or control. Sir, reported Captain Bay, long-range sensors are detecting the main Kethran fleet, changing course. They're heading for the Tau Ceti system instead of continuing toward Earth. Kim studied the tactical display. Tau Ceti was one of humanity's newest colonies with minimal defenses. It made sense for the Kethrans to attack there, instead of facing Earth's strengthened defenses again, or it would make sense if they knew what humanity's real plans were. Perfect, Kim said. Signal all fleet commanders. Phase 2 of Operation Prometheus is now active. The Kethrans thought they were adapting to human tactics. They thought they were making smart decisions based on accurate intelligence. They had no idea that every piece of information they received was carefully crafted to lead them exactly where humanity wanted them to go. General Minho looked around the war room at his officers and advisors. These people had just won an impossible victory against overwhelming odds. But he could see in their faces that they understood this was only the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, the Kethrans wanted to study us for 15 years to learn how to defeat us. They're about to discover that humans are very quick learners too. And we're much better at improvising than they are. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. But for the first time since learning about the Kethran deception, Minho felt confident about their chances. The aliens had Colonel Park Min-jun crouched in the shadows of the asteroid mining facility, watching Kethran guards patrol the perimeter. Intelligence reports had identified this base as a major weapons depot, but what his team found was much worse. This wasn't just a supply station. It was a command center coordinating Catherine operations across 6 star systems. Behind him, 12 of humanity's best Special Forces soldiers waited for his signal. They had trained for this mission for weeks, studying Catherine's security patterns and developing new tactics specifically designed to exploit alien weaknesses. "Remember," Minjun whispered into his comm, "we need their computers intact. The intelligence we gather here could save millions of human lives." The attack began at precisely Oro 300 ship time. Minjun's team moved like ghosts through the facility, using modified equipment that was invisible to Catherine's sensors. The aliens' security was designed to stop conventional attacks, not humans who fought like they were already dead. Within minutes, the facility was secured. But what Minjun found in the computer systems made his blood run cold. The Catherines hadn't just been planning to destroy humanity, they had been systematically destabilizing the entire galaxy. Commander Oh Yun-ji received Minjun's data transmission. While aboard the intelligence ship Silent Hunter, as humanity's top specialist in alien psychology and covert operations, she had spent months analyzing captured Catherine communications. What she discovered painted a picture of deception that went far beyond humanity's situation. Admiral Kim. She reported over secure channel, "The Catherines have been playing a galactic chess game for over 2 centuries. They've been orchestrating conflicts between other species, then positioning themselves as mediators and peacekeepers." The evidence was overwhelming. The Catherines had secretly supported both sides in at least 15 major interstellar wars. They provided weapons to one faction while selling defensive technology to their enemies. When both sides were exhausted from fighting, the Catherines would arrive as neutral peacekeepers, offering protection in exchange for political control. Major Han Ki-woo led the assault on a Catherine prison facility in the Vega system. His Marines expected to find human prisoners, but instead discovered something that changed everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The facility held prisoners from dozens of different species, not just humans, but aliens from civilizations humanity had never even heard of. Many had been held for decades, subjected to the same brain implants and biological experiments that human prisoners had endured. "Colonel Park," Ki-woo reported, "these prisoners have intelligence about Catherine operations throughout the galaxy. According to them, we're not the only species being targeted for extinction. The Catherines have a list of at least 20 civilizations marked for destruction. Dr. Shin Hae-young had been interrogating captured Catherine officers for weeks, trying to understand how their minds worked. As humanity's leading expert in alien psychology, she had developed techniques specifically designed to break through Catherine mental conditioning. What she learned changed humanity's understanding of their enemy completely. "The Catherines aren't just conquerors," she explained to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "They're terrified, more terrified than any species I've ever studied. Their entire civilization is built around the need to control everything around them because they cannot handle uncertainty." The interrogations revealed that Catherine society had evolved on a world where survival depended on perfect prediction and control. Their ancestors had faced environmental disasters that killed anyone who couldn't anticipate and prepare for every possible threat. Over millions of years, this had created a species that was psychologically incapable of dealing with unpredictable situations. "That's why they spent 15 years studying us," Hae-young continued. "They needed to believe they could predict and control human behavior before they dared attack us. When our tactics proved unpredictable, it didn't just defeat their military plans. It challenged their fundamental understanding of how the universe works." The captured officers had revealed something else. The Catherines weren't the real power behind the galactic conspiracy. They were middle management in a vast empire, controlled by an even more alien species called the Hegemon. The Hegemons used the Catherines as their enforcers, letting them think they were in charge while actually controlling them through the same manipulation techniques the Catherines used on other species. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood before the emergency session of the Human Colonial Council, presenting evidence that would reshape galactic politics forever. Representatives from every human world watched as he displayed the proof of Catherine deception and manipulation. "Fellow humans," he began, "we are not just fighting for our survival. We are fighting to expose a conspiracy that has kept the entire galaxy in a state of controlled chaos for centuries." The evidence was irrefutable. The Catherines had been behind the destruction of at least 6 spacefaring civilizations. They had prevented dozens of others from developing advanced technology by providing them with deliberately flawed scientific data. They had kept potential allies from meeting each other by spreading false information about their aggressive intentions. But humanity's investigation had revealed something the conspirators never expected. Their victims had been fighting back. Commander SciFi Realm had been leading first contact missions with species the Kethrans claimed were humanity's enemies. What she found instead were civilizations that had been deceived and manipulated just like humans had been. The Zephyrians have been fighting Kethran infiltration for 50 years, she reported. They thought they were alone until we contacted them. The Crystalline Collective has been documenting Kethran lies and deceptions for over a century. The Void Swimmers have been trying to warn other species about Kethran manipulation, but their messages were always intercepted. One by one, humanity made contact with the Kethrans' other victims. Each species had pieces of the puzzle that, when combined, revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. More importantly, each species brought unique capabilities that could be used against their common enemy. Major Quan Jae-min spearheaded the liberation of Kethran-occupied worlds. His forces had grown from a single human battalion to a multi-species army that combined the best tactics and technologies from dozens of civilizations. The key is not fighting like any single species, he explained to his mixed command staff. Humans provide adaptability and creative thinking. Zephyrians bring superior sensors and stealth technology. Crystalline collective forces have defensive capabilities that make them nearly indestructible. Void swimmers can move through space in ways that defy conventional physics. The combined liberation forces proved devastatingly effective. Kethran commanders found themselves facing tactics they had never seen before, using technologies they didn't understand, coordinated by strategies that seemed to break the rules of military science. On the planet, Kepler 442b, Jaemin's forces, liberated a Kethran research facility where scientists had been developing biological weapons designed to target specific species. The research data they captured revealed that the Kethrans had detailed plans for exterminating not just humanity, but 17 other civilizations. They weren't planning to rule the galaxy, Dr. Hae Young realized when she analyzed the research data. They were planning to empty it. The Kethrans want a galaxy with no unpredictable species in it, no one who might threaten their need for control. The liberation of each Kethran facility provided more intelligence about their operations and more evidence of their crimes. But it also revealed how desperately afraid the Kethrans had become. Their communications showed increasing panic as their carefully controlled empire began falling apart. Colonel Min-jun had expanded his special operations to include teams from multiple species. His latest mission targeted a Kethran communications hub that coordinated their psychological warfare operations across the galaxy. What they found there was a massive database containing detailed psychological profiles of billions of individuals from dozens of species. The Kethrans had been monitoring and analyzing entire civilizations, looking for ways to manipulate their governments, their media, their very thoughts. They've been playing God with the entire galaxy, Min-jun reported. Every major political decision, every cultural movement, every scientific breakthrough for the past 2 centuries has been influenced by Kethran manipulation. But the database also contained something unexpected, evidence that the Kethrans themselves were being manipulated. The Hegemon Empire was using the same psychological control techniques on their Kethran servants that the Kethrans used on other species. Commander Oh Yoon-ji had been analyzing Hegemon communication patterns hidden within the Kethran data. What she discovered suggested that the true enemy was even more alien and dangerous than anyone had imagined. The Hegemons aren't just controlling the Kethrans, she reported. They're studying them, learning how to break down and rebuild entire civilizations. The Kethrans think they're serving the Hegemons willingly, but they're actually just another experiment. The revelation changed everything about humanity's war plans. They weren't just fighting the Kethrans anymore. They were fighting to prevent the galaxy from becoming a laboratory for an alien intelligence that viewed all other life as test subjects. Adi. Captain Nam Yu-jin had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks, following coordinates provided by liberated prisoners from a Kethran research facility. Her ship, the Hidden Truth, was on a diplomatic mission more dangerous than any military operation. She was seeking contact with a species that had been fighting the Kethrans in secret for over a century. The Valdris had been mentioned in captured Kethran communications as a persistent terrorist organization, but the prisoner's testimony painted A very different picture. The Valdris were freedom fighters who had been waging a shadow war against Kethran occupation since before humans even discovered space travel. "Captain," reported her navigation officer, "we're approaching the coordinates. I'm detecting artificial structures hidden in the asteroid field." Yu Jin studied the sensor readings carefully. The Valdris had survived a century of Kethran oppression by being extremely careful about who they trusted. One wrong move could turn this first contact into a battle that would doom any chance of alliance. "Send the recognition signal exactly as the prisoners taught us," she ordered, "and keep our weapons powered down. If they've survived this long against the Kethrans, they're not going to be impressed by human military technology." The response came immediately. A ship unlike anything in human experience emerged from the asteroid field. It seemed to be made of living crystal that shifted and flowed like liquid while maintaining structural integrity. The message that followed was in perfect human language. "Human vessel, you carry the scent of truth and the sound of defiance. We have been waiting to meet our newest brothers and sisters in the fight against the Dominators." Lieutenant Jiang Wu-sung had been working around the clock to develop new psychological warfare techniques based on captured Kethran research. His breakthrough came when he realized that Kethran mental conditioning worked both ways. The same psychological patterns that made them effective controllers also made them vulnerable to specific types of mental attack. "The key is chaos," he explained to his team of specialists. "Kethran minds are designed to process ordered information and create predictable responses. When we feed them completely random data, their thought processes literally break down." Wu-sung's new tactics involved broadcasting seemingly meaningless signals that contained hidden patterns designed to overload Kethran cognitive functions. To human minds, the signals were just noise. To Kethran minds, they were devastating psychological weapons that caused paralysis, confusion, and panic. "We've tested it on captured Kethran officers," Wu-sung reported to Admiral Kim. "Exposure to our chaos signals leaves them unable to make decisions for hours or even days. Their entire command structure could be neutralized without firing a shot." The first test of the chaos weapon came during the Battle of Rigel 7. Commander Seo Areum's reconnaissance fleet encountered a Kethran battle group guarding a major supply route. Instead of engaging with conventional tactics, her ships began broadcasting Wu-sung's chaos signals. The effect was immediate and devastating. Kethran's ships stopped moving in formation. Their communications became garbled and contradictory. Individual vessels began firing at empty space or even at their own allies. Within an hour, the entire battle group had either fled in panic or destroyed itself in confusion. "The psychological weapon works even better than we hoped," Areum reported. "But we need to be careful about using it too often. If the Kethrans figure out how to defend against it, we'll lose a major advantage." Major Quan Jae-min had been coordinating liberation efforts with growing numbers of alien allies. Each species brought unique capabilities that enhanced the combined forces' effectiveness. But it was the Valdris who provided the most valuable asset: knowledge. "Your people learn quickly," observed Valdris Commander Keth Ra, whose crystalline form shifted through different colors as she spoke. "In 1 year, you have accomplished what took us decades to understand. The Dominators are not just conquerors. They are farmers, and we are their crop." The Valdris had discovered that Kethran manipulation followed agricultural principles. They would plant conflicts and cultivate chaos, then harvest the resulting destruction to feed something even more alien. The Hegemon Empire didn't just want to control the galaxy. They wanted to consume it. Every war, every genocide, every civilization that falls to despair produces energy that the Hegemons collect, Keth Ra explained. "The suffering itself is their food. The Kethrans believe they are building an empire, but they are actually preparing a feast." This revelation changed how the Allied forces approached their liberation campaigns. It wasn't enough to defeat Kethran military forces. They had to find ways to prevent the Hegemons from harvesting the psychological energy produced by conflict and suffering. Dr. Shin Hae-young had been working with Valdris psychologists to understand Hegemon feeding patterns. What they discovered was both horrifying and hopeful. The Hegemons required very specific types of emotional energy to sustain themselves. Random violence and natural disasters produced little usable food, but organized oppression, systematic, Cruelty and deliberate psychological torture created exactly the kind of suffering they needed. The good news is that we can starve them, Hay Young reported. If we conduct our liberation campaigns properly, minimizing civilian casualties and focusing on quick, clean victories, we deny the hegemons the sustenance they need. The Allied liberation forces began implementing new tactics based on this understanding. Instead of devastating attacks that would cause widespread suffering, they used surgical strikes that freed populations with minimal psychological trauma. Instead of punishing collaborators, they offered rehabilitation and redemption. Instead of celebrating victories with displays of enemy destruction, they focused on the joy of freedom. Lieutenant Zhang Wusung's psychological warfare unit had expanded to include specialists from multiple species. Together, they developed techniques for healing the mental damage caused by decades of Kethran manipulation. "We're not just fighting a war," Wusung explained to his mixed species team. "We're performing galactic therapy. Every world we liberate, every mind we heal, every spirit we restore removes food from the hegemon table." Captain Nam Yu-jin had become humanity's primary diplomat to the growing anti-hegemon alliance. Her ship traveled constantly between liberated worlds, helping to coordinate resistance efforts and establish communication networks that the Kethrans couldn't infiltrate. "The alliance is growing faster than we ever hoped," she reported during a secure conference with human leadership. "We now have 43 species actively fighting Kethran forces, and over 100 more providing intelligence and support. But the growth of the alliance also brought new challenges. Each species had different fighting capabilities, different cultural values, and different ideas about how the war should be conducted. Some wanted revenge against their former oppressors. Others preferred to focus on defense rather than offense. A few had technological capabilities so advanced that they could end the war quickly, but at the cost of destroying entire star systems. Commander Seo Areum had been tasked with creating a unified command structure that could coordinate forces from dozens of different species without losing the flexibility that made them effective against Kethran rigidity. "The solution is not to make everyone fight the same way," she explained to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "The solution is to let everyone fight in their own way, but coordinate the timing and targets." Areum's new command structure resembled a jazz orchestra more than a traditional military hierarchy. Each species contributed their unique strengths when and where they were most effective, guided by overall strategic objectives but free to improvise tactical details. The result was a fighting force that was completely unpredictable to Kethran's strategic computers. Every battle involved different combinations of species using different tactics, making it impossible for the enemy to develop effective countermeasures. Major Quan Jaemin led the liberation of the Kethran stronghold world of Dominus III, using a battle plan that involved simultaneous attacks by 7 different species. Human forces provided overall coordination and adaptive tactics. Valdris ships phased through solid matter to strike from impossible angles. Zephyrian's stealth technology made entire fleets invisible until they opened fire. Crystalline Collective. Warriors absorbed enemy weapons fire and converted it into shield energy. The battle lasted only 6 hours, but it broke the back of Kethran resistance in 3 star systems. More importantly, it demonstrated that the Alliance could function as a unified force despite its diversity. "The Kethrans are beginning to understand that they're not fighting separate species anymore," Jaemin reported. "They're fighting a new kind of civilization, one that grows stronger through diversity rather than weaker." Dr. Hay Young had been analyzing Kethran communication intercepts and noticed a disturbing pattern. As their empire crumbled and their ability to feed the hegemons decreased, the Kethrans were receiving new orders from their masters. Orders that suggested the hegemons were preparing to abandon their servants and take direct action. "The psychological profiles we've captured suggest that the hegemons are preparing to emerge from hiding," she warned Admiral Kim. "They've been using the Kethrans as a screen to hide their true capabilities." Admiral Ro Sung-min stood before the largest war council in galactic history. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive chamber aboard the Alliance flagship Unity's Dawn. The diversity was staggering. Crystalline beings that communicated through light patterns, gas cloud entities that existed in multiple dimensions, mechanical intelligences older than most stars, and dozens of biological species that had never met before the war began. The Kethran core worlds are heavily fortified, Sung-min began, activating a holographic display that showed the 7 remaining fortress systems. But our intelligence suggests they're preparing for evacuation rather than a final stand. They're moving towards something at the galactic center. Valdris Commander Keth Ra, her crystalline form shifting to deep blue patterns that indicated serious concern, addressed the assembly. The hegemons are calling their servants home. After millions of years of hiding, they are preparing to emerge and feed directly on galactic civilization. The plan that emerged from 3 days of intense discussion was audacious even by human standards. Instead of attacking the Kethran Fortress world sequentially, the Alliance would strike all 7 simultaneously. This would require dividing their forces across thousands of light years while maintaining perfect coordination. The key is timing, explained Commander Seo Arum, who had been promoted to overall tactical coordinator. If even one fortress world manages to complete its evacuation, the intelligence they carry to the hegemons could doom us all. Colonel Bang Ye-jin had spent months infiltrating Kethran society with the help of shape-shifting allies from the Mimic Consortium. Her deep cover operations had placed Alliance agents in key positions throughout the fortress worlds, ready to sabotage defenses at the crucial moment. The Kethrans trust their security systems completely, she reported. They've never adapted to the possibility that other species might be as good at deception as they are. Our agents are in position to take down their planetary shields simultaneously. The infiltration had been incredibly dangerous. Kethran security was designed to detect any form of deception or disloyalty. But the Alliance had learned to use the Kethrans' own psychological limitations against them. The shapeshifters didn't try to hide their alien nature. Instead, they presented themselves as loyal servant species, exploiting the Kethrans' assumption that inferior races could never pose a real threat. Commander No Hyun-soo faced the most complex challenge of the operation. His forces had to capture fortress worlds without destroying them or causing massive civilian casualties. The Kethran populations of these worlds included billions of non-military citizens who had lived under their empire's propaganda for generations. "We're not just fighting a military campaign," Hyun-soo explained to his diverse officer corps. "We're performing the largest rescue operation in galactic history. Every Kethran civilian we save is one less mind for the hegemons to harvest." Hyun-soo's siege tactics involved surrounding each fortress world with humanitarian corridors, safe zones where civilians could be evacuated and processed. Alliance medical teams, including the finest doctors from dozens of species, worked to remove the psychological conditioning that had kept Kethran society loyal to their oppressors. "The average Kethran civilian is as much a victim as anyone else," explained Dr. Park So-young, who had become the Alliance's chief expert on Kethran psychology. "They've been conditioned from birth to believe that controlling other species is not just their right, but their responsibility. Breaking that conditioning without destroying their minds is incredibly delicate work." Captain Lee Ga-young commanded the rapid response fleets that prevented Kethran forces from regrouping or escaping. Her ships used hit-and-run tactics perfected over months of fighting, but now enhanced with technology from dozens of allied species. "The Kethrans still think in terms of individual species with predictable capabilities," she reported during the assault on Kethros 5. "They can't adapt to facing ships that phase through solid matter, weapons that exist in multiple dimensions, and tactics that change based on real-time input from empathic species who can sense their emotional state." The Alliance's technological diversity had become its greatest weapon. Kethran defensive systems were designed to counter known threats using predictable physics. But the Alliance included species that had evolved in environments where different physical laws applied. Their technologies worked in ways that Kethran science couldn't explain or counter. The assault on Kethros Prime, the Kethran homeworld, began with the largest coordinated attack in galactic history. 200 different species contributed forces to the operation, each using their unique capabilities in perfect synchronization. Admiral Ro Sung-min coordinated the overall battle from the Bridge of Unity's dawn, watching as tactical displays showed the simultaneous progress of 7 separate campaigns across the galaxy. The timing had to be perfect. If any fortress world completed its evacuation before the others were secured, the hegemons would receive warning of the Alliance's true capabilities. "Kethros 2 is secured," reported Captain Ga-young. "Civilian evacuation proceeding ahead of schedule." "Kethros 4 shields are down," announced Colonel Bang. Infiltration teams have control of the orbital defense grid. Kethros 7 is offering surrender, Commander No informed the Council. Their population wants protection from the hegemons. But the real battle was taking place on Kethros Prime itself. The Kethran homeworld contained not just the Empire's government, but the primary communication array that linked them to their hegemon masters. If the Alliance could capture that array intact, they might finally understand what they were truly fighting against. Major Quan Jae-min led the assault on the Imperial Palace, fighting through automated defenses that had protected Kethran leadership for millennia. His mixed-species assault team included warriors whose abilities complemented each other perfectly, humans providing tactical flexibility, Valdris offering phase-shifting movement, Zephyrians contributing stealth technology, and Crystalline, collective soldiers absorbing defensive fire. The Kethran leadership is in full panic, reported Lieutenant Jang Woo-sung, monitoring their communications. They're receiving orders from the hegemons to destroy all records and evacuate immediately, but they're also getting contradictory commands to defend their positions to the death. The psychological chaos that Woo-sung's team had been broadcasting was having its intended effect. Kethran command structures were breaking down under the stress of incompatible orders and unpredictable attacks. Centuries of rigid hierarchy were collapsing as individual officers made desperate decisions without coordination. Dr. Shin Ha-young had been analyzing captured Kethran leadership communications throughout the battle. What she discovered changed everything about the Alliance's understanding of their enemy. The Kethrans aren't just servants of the hegemons, she announced to the War Council. They're prisoners. The hegemon entity has been controlling their minds directly for thousands of years. The Kethran Empire was never really independent. It was just an extension of the creature at the galactic center. This revelation explained many puzzles about Kethran behavior. Their need for absolute control, their inability to adapt to unexpected situations, their systematic oppression of other species, all of it had been programmed into them by their hegemon master. That's why breaking our psychological conditioning is so difficult, So-young added. We're not just fighting propaganda and cultural training. We're fighting direct mental control by an entity that understands consciousness better than we understand our own emotions. Colonel Bang's infiltration teams had reached the central communication array on Kethros Prime. What they found there was both terrifying and enlightening. The array wasn't just a communication device, it was a neural interface that connected every Kethran mind to the hegemon entity. It's like a galactic nervous system, Bang reported, studying the alien technology with experts from dozen species. Every Kethran in the Empire is literally a neuron in the hegemon's brain. That's how it's been able to coordinate such complex manipulation across thousands of years. But the neural interface worked both ways. While it allowed the hegemon to control Kethran minds, it also made the creature vulnerable to feedback through the network. Lieutenant Woo-sung realized that his psychological warfare techniques could be amplified through the array to strike directly at the hegemon entity itself. We could send a chaos signal through their entire neural network, he explained excitedly. If we can overload the hegemon's ability to process information from its Kethran servants, we might be able to break its control completely. The final phase of the battle for Kethros Prime involved a desperate race against time. Alliance forces had to secure the neural interface before the remaining Kethran leadership could destroy it, while also preventing the hegemon entity from using the network to turn every Kethran civilian into a suicide weapon. Admiral Sung-min coordinated the timing with precision that would have impressed even Kethran military planners. As Major Jaemin's forces secured the Imperial Palace, Lieutenant Woo-sung's specialists activated their amplified chaos signal through the neural network. The effect was immediate and galaxy-wide. Across all 7 fortress worlds, Kethran military forces sudden. President Cho In-ho stood in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Harmony Station, looking out at the most diverse gathering in the history of the galaxy. 500 species had sent representatives to help design the government that would replace the fallen hegemon empire. The challenge was enormous, creating a system that could unite civilizations that had spent millennia being manipulated into fearing and fighting each other. We gather not as conquerors, but as liberators, Cho began his opening address. Not to impose our will on others, but to ensure that no single species can ever again control the destiny of the galaxy. The final battle with the hegemon entity had lasted 3 months and cost billions of lives. The creature that emerged from the galactic core had been unlike anything the Alliance could have imagined, a living fusion of technology and consciousness that spanned multiple dimensions and fed on the life force of entire civilizations. But humanity's greatest strength had once again proven decisive. While other species had developed incredible technologies and powerful weapons, humans brought something unique to the fight: the ability to inspire hope in others and forge cooperation between the most unlikely allies. Ambassador Kim Yon-soo had spent the year since the hegemon's defeat, traveling to every corner of the galaxy, meeting with species that had been isolated and manipulated for so long they had forgotten what freedom meant. Her job was not conquest or control, but healing, helping civilizations remember how to trust and work together. The hardest part isn't rebuilding the infrastructure, she reported to the Human Colonial Council. It's rebuilding trust. Some species haven't had honest contact with outsiders for thousands of years. They've been conditioned to see every interaction as a potential threat or manipulation. The Galactic Confederation that emerged from these discussions was unlike any government in known history. Instead of a centralized authority that could be corrupted or controlled, it was designed as a network of interconnected but independent civilizations, each contributing their unique strengths to common challenges. General Song Tai-jin faced the complex task of integrating former enemies into the new galactic peacekeeping forces. Many Kethran officers, freed from hegemon mental control, proved to be capable and dedicated individuals who wanted to atone for their empire's crimes. But trust had to be earned slowly and carefully. The key is mixed units, Song explained to his diverse command staff. No single species commands alone. Every peacekeeping fleet includes representatives from at least 5 different civilizations, ensuring that no one group can dominate the others. The integration process had produced unexpected benefits. Kethran's strategic planning abilities, combined with human adaptability and Valdris phase shift technology, created peacekeeping forces that could respond to conflicts more effectively than any single species military had ever managed. Former Kethran Commander Velthon has proven particularly effective, Song reported. Her understanding of Imperial manipulation tactics helps us identify and counter similar attempts by other would-be conquerors. She's requested assignment to the team investigating reports of hegemon survivors in the Outer Rim. Director Moon Ju-hyun oversaw the establishment of the Galactic Information Network, an open intelligence sharing system designed to prevent the kind of deception that had enabled hegemon control. Unlike the secretive spy networks of the past, the GIN operated on principles of transparency and mutual oversight. Information is only powerful when it's hidden, Moon explained to the network's first graduating class of analysts. When everyone has access to the same facts, manipulation becomes nearly impossible. Our job is not to keep secrets, but to ensure that no one else can keep them either. The network included representatives from every member species, each contributing their unique perceptual abilities and analytical methods. Crystalline beings could process vast amounts of data simultaneously. Empathic species could detect emotional manipulation in communications. Mechanical intelligences could identify logical inconsistencies in complex information patterns. Dr. Park So-young had established the Galactic Rehabilitation Center on the former Kethran homeworld, now renamed Liberation. Her work involved healing not just individuals who had been controlled by the hegemons, but entire societies that had been twisted by centuries of manipulation. Recovery is a process, not an event, she explained to her mixed-species medical team. Some civilizations have been under hegemon influence for so long that they've forgotten what their natural culture was like. We're not trying to return them to some imaginary past, but helping them discover who they want to become. The rehabilitation process had revealed the true scope of hegemon manipulation. The entity hadn't just controlled the Kethrans. It had influenced the development of hundreds of species over millions of years, steering their evolution toward greater susceptibility to control and manipulation. But the same diversity that had made the galaxy vulnerable to hegemon control now became its greatest protection against future threats. With so many different ways of thinking and perceiving reality, no single manipulation technique could affect all species simultaneously. Ambassador Kim worked closely with species that had been isolated for millennia, helping them reintegrate into galactic civilization. Each new contact brought unique perspectives and capabilities that strengthened the growing Confederation. "We've established contact with the Quantum Consciousness Collective," she reported excitedly. "They exist partially outside normal space-time, which makes them naturally immune to most forms of mental manipulation. They're offering to help us detect any remaining hegemon influence in our reality." The collective's participation in the Confederation marked a turning point. Their ability to perceive multiple probability streams simultaneously would make it virtually impossible for any future enemy to manipulate galactic civilization through deception or hidden influence. President Cho had been working with the Confederation's founding council to establish principles that would guide galactic civilization for generations to come. The document they produced, known as the Charter of Galactic Freedom, enshrined rights and responsibilities that applied to all thinking beings regardless of their species or nature. "We, the free peoples of the galaxy," the charter began, "unite not under the rule of any single authority, but in defense of the inherent right of all conscious beings to determine their own destiny, free from manipulation, coercion, or control by others." The charter included specific protections against the kinds of manipulation the hegemons had used. No species could be subjected to psychological conditioning without their informed consent. No civilization could be isolated from contact with others. No information could be classified as secret if it related to threats against galactic freedom. General Song had been investigating reports of hegemon survivors in the Outer Rim territories. What his teams found suggested that while the main entity had been destroyed, fragments of its consciousness had survived in hidden installations throughout the galaxy. "They're not capable of the kind of large-scale manipulation the original hegemon used," Song reported to the Confederation Council. "But they're still dangerous. Each fragment seems focused on rebuilding some aspect of the control network." The hunt for hegemon remnants had become a priority for the peacekeeping forces. But instead of operating in secret like the old intelligence agencies, these operations were conducted with full transparency. Every species in the Confederation received regular updates about threats discovered and actions taken. Director Moon's information network had proven crucial in tracking hegemon remnants. The entity's greatest weakness had always been its inability to operate without creating detectable patterns. When hundreds of species shared their observations, these patterns became impossible to hide. "We've identified 17 possible hegemon installations in the past month," Moon reported. "But we've also discovered something interesting. The fragments seem to be fighting each other as much as they're trying to rebuild. Without the central consciousness to coordinate them, they're operating at cross purposes." Dr. So Young's research had revealed why the hegemon fragments were unstable. The original entity had been an artificial fusion of consciousness and technology that required constant maintenance by specialized servant species. Without the Kethrans to maintain the system, the fragments were slowly degrading. "In another generation, or two, the fragments will probably destroy themselves," she predicted. "But we can't wait that long. Even degraded hegemon technology is still dangerous to developing civilizations." The Confederation's response to the hegemon threat demonstrated how much galactic civilization had changed. Instead of secret military operations or covert wars, they launched open campaigns that included extensive civilian participation. Scientists, artists, philosophers, and ordinary citizens from hundreds of species contributed to understanding and countering the threat. Ambassador Kim had been working with newly contacted species in the Galactic Rim, warning them about hegemon manipulation techniques and helping them develop cultural immunity to such influence. Each new species that joined the Confederation brought fresh perspectives that made the entire alliance stronger. "The galaxy is more diverse than we ever imagined." "Shi'ar,"